My name is Shantaa Smith. I am 43 years old. I'm a Miami, Florida native. And what I will share with you today is my experiences in being sexually abused. I grew up in an unstable environment. I think by the time I was 12 years old, I probably had been to like 6 or 7 schools already. I had both of my parents, but we were always moving around in Miami. I can remember one time when I was about 6 years old, living in a home with family members. My mom would live there too. And I can just remember sitting around in the living room and just a bunch of grown folks hanging out. And now I'm older, I understand what was going on. So I grew up in an environment where there was abuse, use bad language. Sometimes it can be violent, neighborhood violence. My mom, she had me when she was about 14 years old. So by the time she was, I'm thinking maybe 18 or 19, if I'm correct, she had 4 kids. So her being a teenage mom, married young, and when I got of age and able to start, staying at home with my brothers and sisters alone, she was always gone. So we lived with my dad for some time, and then once we went and lived with mom, she was always gone. Then I can remember, for whatever reason, we went and lived in the home with all the family members. At that family member's home is when I started being molested. I actually started being molested before I moved with the family members by the neighborhood guy. And I can just remember he had to be about 19 maybe. And he would just come and play with us like normal, like he was one of us 7-year-olds. And, he built that trust and that rapport with me, and I was able to trust him. And I can remember on 3 different occasions where one occasion he took me into a laundry room to play with his private area. He took me on the apartment complex in the stairwell, and he had me playing with his private area. And then there was one time he took me to a park and he sat on a swing with his back turned to the entrance, and he tells me, tell me when someone is coming. But the whole time I'm sitting on his lap facing him, and he has me playing with him as well. And thinking back, I'm like, all 3 times this happened was in the daytime, and each time that happened, someone walked by, some adult walk by, and it psychologically, like, nothing clicked. Like, what is this grown man hanging out with this 7-year-old girl? And I'm sure people in the neighborhood knew that he wasn't related to us. I never really went to therapy. I just suppressed a lot of things. The first time I can ever remember talking about it, I had to have a surgery for ovarian cysts, and I don't know what happened when I came from up under the anesthesia. I just woke up and just started telling everything. Like, this one did this to me, and this one did this to me, and this one, like, I just woke up talking. I don't know if I was dreaming on that table, but when I woke up, I just started talking and telling. So it could have been suppressed, but I can remember throughout my lifetime, if I had to share something with somebody to try to encourage somebody and say, hey, this is what I've been through, or I may recognize something that I've gone through to try to protect another young child, is when the memories will come back up. No one has ever told me if someone touches you this way to tell. So it happened so many times that I thought it was normal. So by the time finished molesting me, then I go on to my cousin in the place where we live with all the family members, and every night they would send me up to bed. I had to sleep in his room. There was 2 beds, and I can remember every night he would take me from the bed that I was in and put me in his bed. The only thing that I can remember is that him always pulling off my underwear. What happened after that, I don't know. And then we wake up and go to school, because we went to the same school. I would have to walk to school with him like everything was normal. So for me, it happened so many times that it was normal. I thought like every little girl goes through that. I've learned to mask throughout my entire life by suppressing all those things. And so when you see me, I'm always in a good mood. So no one would ever suspect that I was going through stuff like that. But then, even in that same project housing where we lived, I don't remember. I know I used to go up to this window. I don't remember if the boy would call me. There was another boy. I call him, excuse my French, but I call him the white lady's son, because I just knew that his mother was a white lady. I never knew his name. I don't remember if he called me to the window, or maybe I would just go to the window because I would see him. But I can remember one time, he had to be about 12. I was about 7. One day he brought me inside and proceeded to take his and stick it in my, try to insert it into my. It didn't go in, of course. And then even when that happened, I walked away like it was, oh, nothing happened. It was normal, and I went on about my day. In that same project housing, when I told you about the boys in the clubhouse, I can just remember it. And you see, because people didn't pay attention to me too much, I can just stroll along and not go far, but I could just stroll along and go outside and play. They didn't know what I got into. And I went down the sidewalk, and there was my cousin. It was a whole bunch of boys in the clubhouse. And I'm thinking, like, these people live around here, I'm safe. I didn't think that they would do anything like that. But I went into the clubhouse, and it was like a whole bunch of animals. Like, they just jumped all over me and started clawing me and fondling me, and I just sat there and let it happen, like nothing, because I was so used to it, the other times that it happened. So okay, it happens again, but this time it was quite a few boys at one time. But it had happened to me so many times, and I felt like I didn't have a voice. I was afraid to tell when I did begin to realize, because it made me feel nasty and disgusting and ugly. And again, I still thought that all little girls go through that. So as I began to go through puberty stage, let's just say that's when I began to wake up and know that these things are not okay. So I grew up thinking that everybody that knows me or cares about me is going to turn on me. It still affects me till today. I'm 43 years old, and my life is just coming together. I wasn't going to be put on medication. I mean, I did have parts of my life where I drank uncontrollably, but that was, my thing of choice. I never did any hard drugs, because I knew I would look like, no, I don't want to be like that. But I didn't even realize that throughout my whole entire life, I was battling and struggling with depression around age 28. And then it's like something clicked, and I'm like, last year around this same time, I was doing the same exact thing. The only thing that's changed was the people and the places, but I was still doing the same thing. And that's when I knew like something had to change. And I remember looking at my son one day, and I asked him, I said, can you tell when mommy is sad? And once he told me, yeah, that's when I knew I had to do something about it. So I made a decision. I prayed about it first. Before I left to go to California, I met a lady on MySpace. We became acquainted, and I prayed about it, and I said, God, if this is for me. And one thing that I can say that I've always done throughout my life, even though I went through all of that stuff, I always prayed and I always talked to God. I may not have always been obedient to him, because he does require us to be obedient, but I've always talked to him. So when he released me to go to California, that's when my life began to change and I began to mature. And I thank God for that child or that kid, because I asked God for him, because I always felt like when I turned a certain age, I'm like, I don't want to live. I didn't feel like I had anything to live for. But I asked God for him, and sure enough, as soon as I asked God for a baby, I think I found out I was pregnant maybe like a month later. So out of everything that I was going through, trying to find myself, wondering why all these things happening to me, but then I have to blame myself now because I'm of age, but I keep ending up in the same patterns, the same relationships, attracting the same type of people. I had to blame myself. My rock bottom was my son's father used to verbally abuse me so bad. He verbally abused me so much that I can remember on Christmas Day, this is before I left for California, I took my son to go get his Christmas presents, but I was driving the car, and as I got to their home and I sat in front, and I can just remember being in a trance, like no drinking, just a whole trance. Psychologically, I wasn't there. I was almost feeling like I would have to go admit myself in the mental ward. And I think that was the lowest place I had in my life. And I knew I had to get out of here because I was about to lose my mind, literally. And my son didn't deserve to have me, his mother, in a mental institute or a mental ward. I don't want to say these things as if I'm angry with my mom, because I'm not. Because I understand she had me when she was only 14 years old. She was abandoned by her mom. That's how she ended up pregnant with me. The only thing she knew was survival. So that's why she had 4 kids at such a young age, and she married my father. So her leaving me at home with my brothers and sisters, I understand now that my mom was searching for herself. She was trying to figure out who she was as a mom. So her leaving me home for days at a time, I understand now that she had her own issues. And I can remember one time, and I think this is how domestic violence for me came into play, and I began to think that was normal, because she had this crazy boyfriend that was like a stalker, and she didn't come home for a few days. And me being 6 or 7 years old, or 8, I think I maybe was 8 at the time, I didn't know. He just said, when your mom comes, do you want me to beat her up? And I said, yeah. And when she came back, I can remember him taking her head and smashing it to the concrete and her trying to get away from him. So in that moment, him putting hands on her made it normal for me to allow someone to put hands on me too. I don't think I had a normal life. I'm not going to say like my entire life was bad and I didn't have some days or some times where I had fun. Because having all these things happen, it being normal, so I didn't think I had a bad life. It was just normal. I had anger, but that anger was not geared towards the people who did those things to me. It was towards myself. I became self-destructive. That's why I ended up working in the strip club. That's why I ended up smoking. That's why I had no guidance. So I just flowed with the wind. Wherever the wind would take me, that's where Shantae go. Whatever friends I had at that time were, whatever they were doing, I would do it too. And that's how I can remember as a teenager, when I was about 16 or 17, I was led into teenage prostitution for a while. And it wasn't something like, oh, I had a pimp. No, it was just like the normal thing. My friends were doing it, and I'm like, wow, they're getting all this money, so I want to try it too. Everything that I was doing, I thought was normal because the people in the community did it. My family did it. I saw my mother do this and my father do this, and my family members did that. So everything was normal for me. When I was 14 is when I met the woman. She was 32. And I can just remember, growing up in my neighborhood, we would have like neighborhood jams where the DJs come out, they set up their speakers and they just play music and the whole community comes out. So she comes and she sees me dancing and she just, rooting me on like, yeah, get it, girl, But in my mind, this is an adult. So I'm thinking that I'm doing something good, not knowing the whole time she's grooming me. She befriended me. She also befriended my mom. I think they became friends, but not like close. My mom knew I was hanging around her. So throughout the years, she would groom me, maybe give me clothes. I can remember one, I think it was a 4th of July weekend. I went and stayed the weekend with her. She wouldn't have sex with me because she knew I was underage, but I can remember her questioning me about my vagina, asking me how I clean it. Oh, when you shower, do you clean this? When you shower, do you clean your vagina this way? And then when I got about 16 or something, we reconnected because she lived around the corner from where my aunt lived. So me thinking that she's my friend, not knowing that she was grooming me the whole time from age 14 is when she would, have me come over to her house or I'll go visit her or whatever, is when she coerced me into having sex with her. And I actually just saw her recently. I did. We had a neighborhood reunion because the project housing where I live is being torn down. So we had like a reunion and I actually ran into her. And I just thank God that I don't have any anger or ill will towards her. Regardless of what you do to me, I don't hold grudges, And I still spoke to her, but then I was looking at her and then that flashback, it hit me like, ew. That's when it hit me when I saw her. That was my addiction. Yes, I became a sex addict because me not getting what I needed from my parents, the love, the acceptance, the guidance. For me, sex is like love because I didn't feel appreciated and loved outside of sex. And the guys that I was with, even maybe the girls or the women that I was with, I felt like they loved me, they appreciated me, they adored me. I didn't even know what domestic violence was before I moved to California. Thank God I went to domestic violence group therapy because I was able to see the signs in that relationship unraveling. So as things began to unravel, it started off with a push here and a shove there and then a verbal abuse. And I knew I had to get out of the relationship. The relationship was so scary that I wouldn't even allow my son to be home with him alone without me. So long story short, when the relationship was coming to an end, I can remember the night before, we were sleeping on the floor because I had got evicted from my apartment. And by the way, that was the best eviction ever because I got rid of him, but I got evicted. And then the next morning, I guess, when we woke up, like something must have clicked in his brain, like this is really over. And so he grabbed a knife and he just came and he held it up like this. And he said, I will kill you. And I just remember doing like this. And I just started praying. I just said, Jesus, 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 Jesus. And I believe in that moment because I called out to God. I know God is real. I called out to God. When I looked up, it was like something had his hand stuck in the air like this. He couldn't even move. Like, you ever seen those cartoons and they freeze? He was frozen for a minute. And then when I got up, he was like, oh, I wasn't finna kill you. I wasn't going to do anything to you. I was actually in school for nursing. I was trying to get my life together at 22. And I got the phone call. And my friend's mom just said, Shantae, tell your mom that is dead on the park. And I can just remember nervously, frantically driving, trying to get over there. And yeah, when we got there, he was dead. And I don't even think I ever grieved him. I just knew that my drinking got worse. My sex addiction got worse. Everything that I needed to cope, or everything that I was doing to cope with other things, got worse. That was the longest 2 weeks in my life. The moment that we put him in that ground, I was just like, thank you, Lord. Even though I was still sad, but we couldn't bring him back. So when he got put in that ground, I was just, thank you, Jesus. Again, I don't think I ever grieved him. I just went about life. I was trying to find my way out of the other stuff that I've been through, and this was just one layer added on to that. Yeah, we were really close. He was a year younger than me. Actually, the last fight that we had when we were kids, he admitted that I beat him up. The person that killed him was his best friend. And I promise you, I have been praying for the last 7 to 8 years, because I knew deep down inside that his friend, that's not something that he wanted to do. And the same reunion that I just told you about, where all the neighborhood people came out, I finally got a chance to see him. I actually was able to give this man a hug and tell him that Jesus loves him and that God still has purpose for his life. So it took 20 years for me to get my healing of losing my brother. And the only way I knew to get it is because I had to forgive. Now I'm just learning to love me at 43 years old. I finally figured it out. I'm doing everything that I like to do. If I show you my apartment right now, I got a bunch of cats. I've turned into a cat rescue lady. I didn't ask God for this, but I understand that when I got my first cats, when people are dealing with issues of abandonment and rejection, I would say get a pet, because that pet is going to prevent you maybe from entering into other things with other people that can cause you more harm, because that pet is going to love you. That pet is going to be loyal to you. That pet is going to show you affection. Everything that you may think that you need from a human person, I would say get a pet. You know, I went through a lot up and down with my relationship with God, but I have him. And my pets, I'm learning about me. I know what I like. I'm starting to juice to change my lifestyle to eating better. I wish I didn't have to work a 9 to 5, but I do work. So I thank God for my job. But I'm really just getting into all the things that I love about myself, because I've always put other people before me. In addition to me learning to love myself and embracing my cats and embracing becoming the cat rescue lady that I didn't ask for, but I love it. I enjoy it. It makes me feel like I'm doing something important, and I'm doing something important because it's something that I like, regardless of who has something to say about. The man that raped me when I was 14, he just passed away. And you know, I thank God, because I didn't feel no way about him, or I didn't say, oh, that's good, you know, because I heard how he passed away. I immediately thought about his children and his family and how they were feeling because they're losing a loved one. But what I learned that I had to do in order to learn how to forgive, because this guy was a registered sex offender. So when I lived back in California, I remember going on the Florida website, the sex offender registry, and I remember pulling up his picture. And I looked at that picture and said, I forgive you. And in that moment, I had an instant release. And I didn't look back. I just kept going.